The heavy cream cardstock sat in the center of my greasy workbench, illuminated by a single hanging shop light. It was my wedding invitation, returned to me by my own father. But he hadn't just checked the regrets box. A thick, aggressive line of red Sharpie slashed through the entire RSVP section, and in his jagged, confident handwriting, he had scrawled a note that made my stomach turn over. We do not attend events that degrade the Vance brand. Do not contact the campaign office until this phase of your rebellion is over. My name is Elena Vance. To the voters of Pennsylvania, I am the wayward, rebellious daughter of Senator William Vance, a man currently polling 4 points ahead in a vicious re-election race. To my mother, Eleanor, I am a compliance error, a stain on her perfectly curated, aggressive beige existence. But to the bank and the FAA, I am a 26-year-old aircraft restoration specialist who owns half of Miller Aviation. I looked down at my hands. They were stained with engine oil and hydraulic fluid, the nails cut short and practical. I picked up a rag and wiped the grease off my thumb, staring at the red ink on the invitation. My father thought this note would break me. He thought the silence of the Vance family withdrawing their love would force me back into the fold, weeping and apologetic, ready to marry a junior lobbyist in a suit. He forgot that I grew up watching him destroy his enemies. He forgot that I learned everything I know about leverage from sitting quietly at his dinner table while he bragged about burying the opposition. If you have ever been treated like a liability by the people who are supposed to protect you, hit that like button. And if you want to see exactly what happens when a senator's biggest secret walks into the light, make sure you are subscribed, because the photo I am about to take is going to cost him a lot more than a wedding gift. Let me take you back to yesterday morning. The venue wasn't the country club my mother wanted. It was a small, historic chapel about 10 miles outside of town, surrounded by tall oaks. It was simple, honest, and real. Everything the Vance estate was not. Inside, the wooden pews smelled of lemon polish and old paper. At 11 o'clock, the music started. A lone cello played something deep and resonant. I stood in the vestibule adjusting the lace on my dress. It was a vintage piece I had restored myself, much like the planes I worked on. My fiancé, Lucas Miller, stood at the altar. Lucas is an aircraft mechanic. He has calloused hands, a laugh that shakes the room, and zero interest in polling numbers or gala dinners. He looked handsome in his charcoal suit, his eyes locked on the double doors, waiting for me. But as I stepped into the nave, the silence hit me like a physical blow. The left side of the chapel, the groom's side, was packed. Mechanics, pilots, parts suppliers, and Lucas's loud, loving family filled every inch of the wooden benches. They were smiling, some wiping tears, radiating warmth. The right side, the bride's side, was a graveyard. 20 rows of empty pews stretched out before me. Not a single soul. My mother, Eleanor, was not there to critique my hair. My younger sister, Sophia, was not there to live stream the event for her influencer following. And my father, Senator William Vance, was definitely not there to walk me down the aisle. He was likely at a brunch fundraiser in Philadelphia, shaking hands and telling donors that his daughter was under the weather or volunteering overseas. Anything but the truth, that she was marrying a blue-collar mechanic in a dusty chapel. I walked down the aisle alone. The click of my heels on the hardwood echoed in the emptiness of the right side. I kept my chin high, my eyes fixed on Lucas. I refused to let my shoulders slump. I refused to let a single tear fall for a man who cared more about his approval rating than his daughter's happiness. When I reached the altar, Lucas reached out and took my hand. His grip was warm and solid. He leaned in and whispered, "Look at me, Elle. I'm all the family you need." We said our vows. We exchanged simple gold bands. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and the left side of the room erupted in cheers. But the real ceremony happened 10 minutes later, outside in the bright afternoon sun. We were taking photos near the tree line. The photographer, a friend of ours named Sarah, was snapping candid shots of us laughing. "Okay," Sarah said, lowering her camera. "Let's get the family portraits. Groom's side first." Lucas's parents, brothers, and cousins swarmed us, hugging and cheering. It took 10 minutes to get through the combinations. "Great," Sarah said, checking her list. She hesitated, looking at the empty space behind me. "And the bride's side?" The air grew heavy. Lucas squeezed my waist. "It's just us, Sarah. Skip it." "Not just us," a voice rumbled from the parking lot. I turned around. A vintage Ford truck had pulled up onto the gravel, its engine ticking as it cooled. The door creaked open, and a man stepped out. He wore a simple navy blazer over a white t-shirt and dark jeans. He had graying hair swept back from a high forehead and broad shoulders. He walked with a slight limp, but his posture was upright and proud. As he got closer, Sarah the photographer actually gasped and lowered her camera. Lucas stiffened. The man walking toward us had the exact same face as Senator William Vance, the same jawline, the same deep-set eyes, the same nose. But where my father's face was usually set in a sneer of judgment or a fake politician smile, this man's face was etched with smile lines around the eyes. He looked like the version of my father that might have a soul. "Uncle Arthur," I breathed. Arthur Cole smiled. "I heard there was a wedding. Figured one Vance man should have the decency to show up." Arthur was the family secret, the twin brother my father had erased from history 30 years ago. I had only met him 3 years ago, after finding a suppressed photo in the attic. But we had built a quiet friendship over coffee and engine parts. He lived 3 towns over, fixing boat motors and staying completely off the grid to avoid my father's wrath. "I didn't think you'd come," I said, my voice finally cracking. "Dad, if he finds out." "Let him find out," Arthur said, stepping up to me. He didn't offer a stiff handshake. He pulled me into a bear hug that smelled of cedar and diesel. "I'm proud of you, Elena. You found a good one." He shook Lucas's hand firmly. "Treat her right, or I'll dismantle your transmission." Lucas laughed. "Yes, sir." "Sarah," I said, a sudden cold clarity washing over me. "Take the picture." "Which one?" she asked. "Me, Lucas, and Arthur. Right here. Make sure the lighting is perfect." We stood together. Arthur on my right, Lucas on my left. Arthur put his arm around my shoulder and smiled, a genuine, warm, grandfatherly smile that looked terrifyingly like the senator's campaign posters, only real. Click. That single image was more dangerous than a loaded gun. An hour later, the reception was winding down. I sat at the head table, still in my wedding dress. I pulled my phone out of my clutch. I opened the messaging app. I scrolled past the congratulations texts from friends and found the group chat pinned to the bottom. Name: Vance Campaign Inner Circle members. Senator Vance, Eleanor Vance, Sophia Vance, Campaign Manager Mark. This chat was used exclusively for high-level strategy, polling updates, and managing the family image. It was usually silent on weekends, unless there was a crisis. I opened the photo gallery. I selected the high-resolution JPEG Sarah had just airdropped to me. The photo was crystal clear. It showed the happy couple, and standing tall beside us, the spitting image of the senator, the brother he claimed died in 1995. I didn't write a paragraph. I didn't write a plea for love. I typed a single caption. "Found the dad who actually wanted to show up. Thanks for the empty seat." I took a deep breath. The anger in my chest wasn't hot anymore. It was cold and hard, like steel. I pressed send. Most people think political skeletons are buried in shallow graves. But in the Vance family, they were locked in a dusty attic box labeled 1995 disposal. I was 15 when I found it. My mother had sent me up to find an old tablecloth for one of her endless charity luncheons. Instead, I found a shoebox shoved behind the insulation. Inside was a single Polaroid of two young men standing on the steps of the Capitol. They looked identical, down to the way they stood with their weight on their left foot. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written, "William and Arthur, Campaign Launch 95. I knew who William was. He was the man downstairs, currently yelling at a staffer about polling data. But Arthur didn't exist in the Vance family tree. It took me 8 years to find him. I used every skipped lunch break and every favor I could call in from the few friends I had in the county clerk's office. Arthur Vance hadn't died, he had been erased. He changed his last name to Cole 3 months after that photo was taken and moved 3 counties over to a town so small it barely had a zip code. When I finally drove my truck out to his marina 3 years ago, I expected a monster. That is what my father always said about traitors, that they were unstable, dangerous, envious creatures. Instead, I found a man with grease under his fingernails and a smile that reached his eyes, something my father's smile never did. He didn't want to talk about the past at first, but over 3 years of coffee and engine repairs, the truth bled out. And yesterday, sitting in my hangar while my phone blew up with notifications from the group chat, Arthur handed me the weapon that would end the war. "I kept the originals," he said, sliding a heavy, yellowing envelope across the metal workbench. I knew one day he would get sloppy. I opened the clasp. Inside wasn't just a birth certificate, it was the 1995 Vance Family Trust. My grandfather, the original Senator Vance, hadn't left the empire to William alone. The land, the bonds, the initial $3 million in campaign seed money, it was split 50-50. The document was clear as day. "So how did he get it all?" I asked, flipping to the next page. "Look at the signature on the quitclaim deed," Arthur pointed a calloused finger, "and the renunciation of interest form." I looked. The signature read Arthur Vance, but the loop on the A was too sharp. The slant was aggressive, leaning hard to the right. It matched the handwriting on the regrets note my father had sent me yesterday perfectly. "He forged it," I whispered. 28 years ago, Arthur confirmed. He told me he bought me out, said the papers were just formalities for the bank. I was 22 and didn't care about politics. I signed what I thought was a loan agreement for a boat shop. It wasn't until 5 years later I realized he had transferred the entire estate into his sole name and used my renunciation to avoid the inheritance taxes. This wasn't just a family secret. This was grand larceny and fraudulent conversion of assets. It was a felony that had no statute of limitations when it came to the recovery of stolen property in a trust. I didn't just take his word for it. I had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment. I hired James Orson, a forensic document examiner who usually testified for the FBI. He had compared the 1995 signatures against known samples of my father's handwriting from the same year. His 20-page report was currently sitting in my fireproof safe, concluding with highest degree of probability that William Vance had signed his brother's name. My phone buzzed against the metal table, vibrating so hard it rattled a socket wrench. Caller ID, Sophia Vance. I put it on speaker. "Have you lost your absolute mind?" Sophia's voice shrieked through the hangar, echoing off the aluminum fuselage of a Piper Cub. "Do you have any idea what that photo is doing? The opposition is already tweeting about secret Vance children." "Hello, Sophia," I said, calm as a pilot in a crosswind. "I take it you saw the wedding pictures." "Wedding? You call that a wedding?" She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "You got married in a shed to a mechanic, and then you photoshopped some random old man to look like Dad? We are 2 days away from the victory gala, Elena. Dad is polling within the margin of error. It's not a Photoshop, I said, and you know it. I don't care what it is, she screamed. Dad is furious. Mom is hyperventilating in the sunroom. You are going to issue a retraction immediately. You will post that it was a prank, a filter, I don't care. You will apologize for disrespecting the family brand, and you will delete that photo. Or what? Or Dad cuts you off completely. No access to the trust, no inheritance, nothing. You'll be scrubbing grease off your hands for the rest of your miserable life with that trash husband of yours. I looked at Lucas, who was working on a propeller across the room. He wasn't trash. He was the only honest man I knew. I won't be apologizing, I said, but tell Dad I'm coming to the gala. I think it is time we cleared the air in person. You better, she hissed, and wear something that covers your tattoos. We have donors to impress. The line went dead. Arthur watched me, his expression somber. He reached into the envelope and pulled out one last document. It was a certified copy of the original 1995 trust, notarized and untouched by my father's forgery. I don't want the money, kid, Arthur said softly. I never did. I just want the lie to stop. He built a castle on a foundation he stole from his own blood. It is time he paid the rent. I took the document. It felt heavy, like holding a brick of gold or a stick of dynamite. He thinks he can bully me into silence on his stage, I said, placing the papers into my leather satchel next to the forensic report. He thinks I am just the mechanic's wife who needs a monthly allowance. I looked at the RSVP card with the red line through it one last time. He's about to find out that mechanics know exactly how to take things apart. By 9 o'clock the next morning, the photo wasn't just in the group chat. It was the headline on Capital Insider, the state's nastiest political blog. The headline read, "The Senator's Secret Double. Vance campaigns silent on wedding mystery." I sat in the office of Miller Aviation, feet propped on the desk, watching the senator's approval rating on the local news ticker. It had dipped 3% overnight. Not a collapse, but a wobble. In the Vance world, a wobble was a catastrophe. Outside, tires screeched against the asphalt. I didn't need to look out the window to know it was a matte black Mercedes G-Wagon. Only one person drove a tank to a grocery store. Sophia stormed into the hangar 30 seconds later. The visual contrast was almost comical. She was wearing a cream silk power suit and 5-inch stilettos that clicked furiously on the concrete floor, dodging oil pans like they were landmines. "You leaked it," she spat, slamming her designer bag onto a stack of flight manuals. "Do not lie to me, Elena. Mark says the IP address traced back to a VPN, but we know it was you. I have no idea what you are talking about," I lied, my voice steady. "I just shared a family memory." "A family memory?" She laughed, a frantic, jagged sound. "Dad is in crisis mode. The donors are calling. They want to know if he has an illegitimate brother or if he's been cloning himself. You have to fix this. Now." "Why would I fix it?" I asked, standing up. "He wouldn't even walk me down the aisle." "This isn't about your little wedding," she screamed. "This is about the legacy. The gala is tomorrow night. If he loses this seat, we lose everything. The leverage, the connections, the future." She took a breath, smoothing her hair. "He wants to see you, at the estate, now." "I am busy," I said, gesturing to a disassembled engine block. "He is ready to make a deal," Sophia said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He knows he pushed too hard. He wants to bring you back in, full reinstate to the trust. He just needs a show of unity." I looked at Lucas, who was watching from the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. The trap was set. Now I just had to walk into the lion's den to arm it. Fine, I said. I will drive myself. The Vance estate loomed on the hill like a fortress, cold stone and manicured hedges that looked more like barricades than gardens. I pulled my truck up next to the fleet of campaign SUVs. The house was quiet, but it was the silence of a held breath. I found them in the library. It was a room designed to intimidate: dark wood, leather furniture, and a massive portrait of my grandfather hanging over the fireplace. My mother, Eleanor, sat on a velvet sofa, staring out the window, a glass of iced tea sweating in her hand. She didn't look at me. Senator William Vance stood by the fireplace. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes were deeper than usual, but his posture was still rigid with arrogance. "You have caused quite a mess, Elena," he said, not turning around. "I just got married, Dad. I thought you might want to see the photos." He turned then, his eyes cold. "Arthur Cole is a con man, a drifter. He found you, fed you lies about a stolen inheritance, and you, gullible, desperate for attention, ate it up. He has the same face as you, Dad." "Plastic surgery," my mother said from the couch, her voice brittle. "Or a coincidence. We looked into him years ago. He is mentally unstable." The gaslighting was impressive. If I hadn't seen the forensic report, I might have felt crazy. "Let's cut to the chase," the senator said. He walked to his desk and picked up a single document, sliding it across the mahogany surface. "The gala is tomorrow. I need you on that stage. I need you to stand next to me, smile, and tell the donors that the photo was a misunderstanding, a prank." I looked at the paper. It wasn't just a press release. It was a legal document titled Statement of Family Unity and Mental Clarity. I scanned the paragraphs. It was horrifying. By signing, I would admit that I had been suffering from temporary emotional distress, that Arthur Cole was an unrelated stranger I had hired to hurt my father, and that I fully retracted all claims regarding family secrets. In exchange, the document outlined a wellness stipend of $5,000 a month contingent on my silence and compliance. It was a gag order dressed up as a mental health crisis. "You want me to say I am crazy," I said flatly. "We want to help you," my mother said, finally looking at me. Her eyes were empty. "You haven't been yourself since you met that mechanic. This secures your future. And if I don't sign?" "Then I bury you," the senator said. His voice didn't rise. It just got harder. "I will sue you for defamation. I will sue your husband's little shop into bankruptcy. I will make sure you spend the next 10 years in court battles you cannot afford. Or you sign, you smile, and you get your life back." I looked down at the paper. I let my hand tremble, just a little. I bit my lip, feigning hesitation. I can't lose the shop. Lucas worked too hard for it." The senator's shoulders relaxed. He saw the weakness. He moved in for the kill. "Exactly. Be smart, Elena. Sign it." I picked up the pen, hovered it over the line, and then stopped. I will do it," I said, looking up at him. "I will come to the gala. I will walk onto that stage and tell the world the truth about our family. But I won't sign this until afterwards." "Why?" he snapped. "Because you promised to come to my wedding and you didn't. I don't trust your promises anymore, Dad. I do the speech first. Then, right there in the green room, I sign the papers. You get your victory, I get my security." He studied me. He was a man used to sensing bluffs, but his ego blinded him. He believed he was the most powerful man in the room. He believed I was broken. He believed that once I was on his stage, under his lights, he could control whatever came out of my mouth. "Fine," he said. "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Wear something appropriate. And Elena, if you deviate from the script by one word, I will destroy you." "I know, Dad," I said, standing up. "I know exactly what you are capable of." I walked out of the library, past my silent mother, and out the heavy front doors. The air outside tasted sweet. I got into my truck and pulled my phone out. I typed a single text to Lucas. "The stage is set. Bring the projector." The grand ballroom of the Fairmount Hotel was a sea of black ties, sequins, and calculated smiles. 500 of the state's wealthiest donors sat at round tables draped in heavy linen, waiting to coronate my father for another 6-year term. The air smelled of expensive perfume and prime rib. I stood in the wings of the stage, smoothing the skirt of a navy dress that my mother had deemed acceptable. Sophia stood next to me, scrolling frantically on her phone, checking the livestream metrics. "Don't screw this up," she hissed, not looking at me. "Dad is polling even right now. He needs a bump. Just smile, nod, and let him do the talking." "I know the script, Sophia," I said, my pulse steady. On stage, Senator William Vance stood behind the podium, bathed in the golden glow of the spotlight. He looked commanding, the very picture of American stability. A massive screen behind him displayed a waving flag. "Family," he boomed, his voice resonating through the high-end sound system. "It is the bedrock of our society. It is the foundation upon which I built this campaign. And like any family, the Vances have had our challenges, but we face them together." He swept his arm toward the wing. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my daughter, Elena." The applause was polite, restrained. I walked on to the stage. The lights blinded me for a second, but I found my mark next to the podium. My father placed a heavy hand on my shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to hurt. It was a warning. "Elena has been through a difficult time," he continued, smiling at the crowd while his fingers dug into my clavicle. "But she has come home, and she wants to set the record straight regarding the vicious rumors circulating about our family." He stepped back, gesturing for me to take the microphone. He expected a retraction. He expected a broken daughter. I gripped the podium. I looked out at the sea of faces, the donors, the press, the campaign staff. Then I looked up at the tech booth in the balcony, where a figure in a baseball cap gave me a thumbs up. "Thank you, Senator," I said. My voice didn't shake. "My father is right. Family is everything, and the truth is the only thing that can save it." I turned to him. "Which is why I couldn't let you accept this nomination without the person who actually paid for it." I pointed to the booth. "Lucas, hit it." The waving flag on the massive screen vanished. In its place, a high-resolution document appeared, magnified 20 feet tall. It was the 1995 Vance Family Trust. The room went quiet. I could hear the hum of the projector. "What is this?" my father hissed, reaching for the mic. I blocked him with my body. "This," I said to the crowd, "is the original deed to the Vance estate, the one my father claimed left everything to him." The slide changed. Now 2 signatures appeared, side by side, blown up for everyone to see. On the left, the signature my father forged to steal his brother's inheritance, I narrated, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. And on the right, the forensic analysis proving it was written by the same hand that signs your legislation. "Cut the feed," Sophia screamed from the wings. "Cut the mic." But Lucas had locked the system. "You said family faces challenges together, Dad," I said, turning to face him. He was pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. So I brought the rest of the family. I gestured to the far side of the stage. Arthur Cole walked out from behind the heavy velvet curtains. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He wore his Sunday best, a simple gray suit that was 10 years out of style. He walked with his slight limp, stopping center stage under the unforgiving lights. The gasps started in the front row and rolled backward like a wave. The resemblance wasn't just striking, it was terrifying. It was like looking at a ghost. Arthur looked exactly like the senator, stripped of the polish and the cruelty. My father froze. He stared at his twin brother, the man he had erased, the man he had robbed, standing 10 feet away on his victory stage. "Arthur," the senator whispered, the microphone catching the tremble in his voice. "Hello, William," Arthur said, his voice deep and calm, projecting without a mic. Cameras flashed in a blinding strobe. Reporters were standing on chairs. Eleanor, standing in the front row, brought a hand to her throat and genuinely swayed, caught by a donor before she hit the floor. "This is a trick," my father shouted, finally snapping out of his shock. "Security, get this imposter off my stage." "He is not an imposter," I said. "He is the rightful owner of the stage you are standing on." I reached into the podium shelf where I had stashed my leather satchel earlier that day. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. "You wanted me to sign a statement of mental instability, Dad? I didn't sign it." I tossed the envelope at his feet. It landed with a heavy thud. "That is a civil suit for fraudulent conversion of assets, grand larceny, and a petition to freeze all campaign funds derived from the Vance Trust. You have been served, Senator." The crowd was in chaos. Donors were shouting questions. My mother was being fanned by 3 people. Sophia was trying to block a news camera with her clutch. My father looked at the envelope, then at Arthur, then at the massive screen displaying his crime. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving him looking small and old. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "You erased him to build your empire," I said. "Now he is here to foreclose." I took Arthur's arm. "Let's go, Uncle Arthur. We have a victory dinner to get to." We walked off the stage, leaving Senator Vance alone under the spotlight, surrounded by the wreckage of his own lies. 6 months later, the silence in the hangar was replaced by the roar of a twin-engine Beechcraft we were restoring for a client in Denver. Business at Miller Aviation had tripled since the gala. It turns out, people like doing business with mechanics who value the truth. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and walked into the office. The small television in the corner was muted, tuned to the local news. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Former Senator Vance indicted on 3 counts of wire fraud." My father didn't last a week after the Fairmont disaster. The forensic report regarding the 1995 trust wasn't just a campaign killer, it was a roadmap for the district attorney. When Arthur filed the civil suit for fraudulent conversion, the dominoes fell fast. The FEC froze the campaign war chest, the donors demanded refunds, and the party leadership publicly disavowed him before the sun came up the next morning. He resigned via a written statement, citing health reasons. He didn't even have the courage to face the cameras. I picked up a coffee mug, one of the few things I kept from my old life, and walked to the window. The Vance estate, that cold fortress of stone and secrets, was currently empty. The probate court had moved with terrifying speed once the forgery was authenticated. The judge issued a summary judgment returning the entire estate to the 1995 trust. Arthur Cole, the man they tried to erase, was now the legal owner of everything William Vance had built. But Arthur didn't move into the mansion. He didn't want the marble floors or the portraits of ancestors who lied. "Sell it," he had told me over a plate of eggs at the local diner the day the deed transferred. "Sell the house, sell the furniture, sell the ego. I'm keeping the land by the river for fishing, but the rest, it's tainted." We liquidated the assets last month. The proceeds didn't go into yachts or galas. Arthur established the Vance Cole Trade Scholarship, a fully funded program for kids who wanted to be mechanics, welders, and electricians, the exact kind of people my father wouldn't let through his front door. As for the rest of the family, the fallout was absolute. Sophia tried to pivot, of course. 2 weeks after the scandal broke, she posted a 20-minute My Truth video on YouTube, crying without tears in perfect lighting. She claimed she was a victim of our father's manipulation, that she had no idea about Uncle Arthur. The internet didn't buy it. The comments section was a bloodbath. She lost her brand deals, her agency dropped her, and the last I heard, she was trying to sell her designer wardrobe on Poshmark to cover the lease on her G-Wagon. My mother, Eleanor, moved to a condo in Florida. She sends me generic holiday cards now, signed simply Mother, with no return address. She chose the lie until the bitter end, and now she has to live with the silence she purchased. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Lucas. "Dinner's ready. Arthur brought the brisket." I locked up the office and walked out into the main bay. The sun was setting through the high windows, casting long, golden shadows across the polished aluminum wings of the planes. In the back corner of the hangar, we had set up a long wooden table. It wasn't elegant. It was covered in butcher paper and surrounded by mismatched chairs. But the food was hot, the beer was cold, and the people sitting there were real. Lucas was carving a brisket that had been smoking for 12 hours. Arthur was sitting at the head of the table, laughing at a joke one of our junior mechanics told. He looked younger now, the weight of the secret finally lifted off his shoulders. I walked over and sat down between my husband and my uncle. "How's the new intake looking?" Arthur asked, passing me a plate. "Full," I said, smiling. "We have 50 kids applying for the fall semester of the scholarship. We might need to hire more instructors." "Good," Arthur nodded. "Let's build something that actually lasts this time." I looked up at the wall above the workbench. Hanging there, slightly dusty from the day's work, was the framed photo from the wedding. Me, Lucas, and Arthur. The smile on Arthur's face in that picture was the same one he wore now. Genuine, kind, and free. My father spent his life trying to build a legacy on an image. He thought power came from fear, from control, from erasing the inconvenient truths. He thought he could edit his family like a press release. He was wrong. Real power isn't in the title you hold or the mansion you own. It is in the ability to look at yourself in the mirror without flinching. It is in the hands that fix things, not the hands that sign fake deeds. I took a bite of the brisket. It was perfect. We didn't just burn down a fake empire, we built a real life from the ashes. And looking around this table, listening to the laughter that echoed off the metal walls, I knew we had won the only election that mattered. If you have ever had to burn down a bridge to stop the enemy from following you, drop a comment below. And if you believe that the truth is the only legacy worth leaving, hit that subscribe button. My name is Elena Vance. I am a mechanic, a wife, and a niece. And I am finally free.